Director Carr has asked to be excused. Director Garcia.
Present.
Director Gokul-Gandhi.
Present.
Director Herndon has asked to be excused. Director Leonard is also excused. Director O'Halloran.
Here.
Director Simpson is excused. Vice President Taylor. And President Peterson.
Present.
We have 5 present.
The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Members, please mute your devices.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Milwaukee lies on traditional Menominee, Potawatomi, and Ho-Chunk homeland along the southwest shores of Lake Michigan, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes. On this site, the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Connecticut rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's Menominee, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Oneida, and Mohican sovereign nations remain present to this day. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we will have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of the audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799 e introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
Gracias. Pursuant to Board Rule 1.06, this meeting is being conducted virtually in order to allow as much public participation as possible. However, board members may be participating from the Central Services Building. This meeting is also being broadcast on radio station WIMS 88.9 FM via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we move to our agenda, the chair will ask that we share in a moment of silence to commemorate the passing of the following members of the MPS community. Patty Arnold, a retired teacher at Franklin School. Sister Paula Marie Haros, a former teacher with Milwaukee Public Schools. Bobby Johnson, a retired principal at Bethune Academy. Jean Kahn, a retired music teacher with Milwaukee Public Schools. We will now move on to the items of business on our agenda. In accordance with board rules, the board does not take public testimony on any items during regular monthly meetings of the board. However, one item, item 3, from the reports and communications from the Superintendent of Schools was noticed for public hearing, and those who wished to give testimony were required to register in advance. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone registered to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Okay. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or, excuse me. Very well. What is our first item of business?
The first item of business on tonight's agenda is the minutes of the October and November special and regular meetings of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Do any members of the board have corrections for the minutes of October or November 2021? Okay. There being no corrections, the minutes are approved as presented. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the superintendent?
Yes, Mr. President, we do have 3 communications from the superintendent. The first communication is the monthly report with possible action from the superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will the superintendent please present the report?
Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. This month's report outlines some of the district's highlights. Wisconsin Health and Physical Education, Inc., the state's professional association for health and physical educators, awarded Milwaukee Public Schools the 2021 Advocacy Award. The award recognizes the districts for these efforts made to advance the profession through the field of health, physical education, and related fields. We are honored to receive this award and better serve our students' health and wellness. On November 30th, Milwaukee Public School students from Milwaukee Academy of Chinese Languages, Golda Meir, and Washington High School participated in the district's 4th annual Day of Code. Our students showed off their technology skills and offered presentations and demonstrations to kick off the National Computer Science Week. Please visit the district's website to view each session presented by our students. Milwaukee Public Schools is proud to be one of 12 districts across the state of Wisconsin to offer the Seal of Biliteracy. The Seal of Biliteracy is awarded to high school seniors who successfully complete criteria related to English language proficiency and show a high degree of proficiency in another language. The Seal of Biliteracy is available in 12 Milwaukee Public Schools high schools. For more details and information, my report is attached for your review. At this time, I will ask Mr. David Solifa-Ferrick to provide an update related to transportation in Milwaukee Public Schools. We also have a special guest with us, Ms. Amunique Triplett. Amunique is completing a strong career in Milwaukee Public Schools, graduating from Rufus King High School with a grade point average of 4.0. Amunique is enrolled in the MQ College Connection program in the nursing pathway. Not only does she have a stellar academic record, she remains actively involved in extracurricular activity at King, including Investment Club, the Academic Decathlon, and the president of the Youth Financial Literacy Program. I would like to recognize her family for being here with her and supporting her through her journey. Amunique is successfully completing the MQ College Connection nursing program. She has completed all of the required coursework to receive the practical nursing license in the fall of semester of the 2021, with 1 semester remaining in her high school career. So she has one semester left, and you will hear from her after David is complete. David?
Thank you, Dr. Posley. David Solifa-Ferrick, Director of Business and Transportation Services for Milwaukee Public Schools. Tonight I'll give an update on the transportation kind of operations for the month of December as we continue to, I guess, overall see an upbeat trend in our overall operations. And I think tonight, based on last month, I had reported that we had finally had basically a butt in every seat for a bus driver, and that remains to be true. The month of December actually seen, I think, a net gain of 30 drivers for the month. So that helps us every day. And I think the challenge right now for us is really just trying to piece back together packages that we had removed in August and September. And so I'll kind of frame that out a little bit. We, before the school year started, we cut 200 buses from the fleet just to get us to a place where we thought that we could open up and successfully service every family. When we opened up the first week of school, we've seen between 80 and 100 drivers that had either started and quit or had excessive shortage translated because of some factor or another. So it took us about a month and a half to get from that 80 to 0. And so while I'm remaining upbeat, and it actually has improved dramatically, every net gain that we have for now is really to get us to a place of, I guess, what I call pre-COVID, where the buses that we had assumed that we would have for optimal service is being used to, when we get every driver, is used for that capacity. And so what that translates for us is basically we're taking late arrivals that continue to persist. And, we package these runs pretty tight because, of course, of the dynamic that we were under, and then disassembling them and taking every driver that a net gain driver that we have and addressing late arrivals. And so I think there'll be one trend that continues to surface periodically, and that is my bus is showing up late at the end of the day. It's 20 minutes late to particularly the third tier of a 3-tier system. And so, we start at 2:20, we then get to the second tier at 3:20, and then 4 o'clock to that third tier. So if everything kind of is specifically as weather kind of impacts some of those, if everything doesn't go perfect, that's where we start to see those delays. And that's where extra buses translate to more efficient and effective service for us. But again, the mantra here is that we're not losing drivers, we're gaining drivers. It is to correct problems that we dramatically reduced from July to August. And so I do continue to see progress in that arena. The second piece that we have to report is the parent contracts. And so there was a discussion about, how many parent contracts did we issue to basically assist families and reimburse them for the services that we're providing during those months. And we sent out contracts for approximately 1,000 families. We have, just to summarize, a third of those families have been sent checks. About almost 2/3 of the families either didn't return or had somebody other than a parent guardian that we had identified sign the contract. So that creates a little bit of some challenges for us because we have to locate those families and or reissue contracts. And so we are in, phase 2 of that contract distribution process, which is to identify the appropriate family member to get to sign the contract so that we can actually pay for those services. It's a little bit of a labor-intensive task, but I think once we sent out those contracts in the middle of it was the end of October, we got about over half of them back undeliverable. So that was one of the challenges that we had to locate those families. If I recall correctly, the third piece that I wanted to bring back to the board was appeals. And I know that was a question that we had. And I have some numbers here. We have approximately 100 approved appeals out of 354 that were submitted. And we really only denied 13. So the challenge was not denying people that we couldn't accommodate, but basically putting them on pause as we regroup. And so we still have a little over 100 to 200 that are in pending status. Of course, every day there are new appeals, and by the time we actually get to families, they may have addressed the situation. And so we continue to work through those appeal protocol to address families as quickly as we can. Outside of that, the only other piece that I think that I would mention is that although we continue to have a butt in every seat, absenteeism due to sickness, COVID, is dramatically higher than we've ever experienced. And so that just continues to be a challenge. And I don't know that that's going to go away anytime soon, but we, at this point, expect it. We're working around that. And we're not losing drivers, but we do have some attendance-related issues that creates additional delays. That's all from my report. Of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does the board have any questions or comments? Dr. Taylor.
Thank you. I know we said there was only 13, which I understand that was rejected, but do we have a tentative or average of time frame that we are getting back to the parents? I just remember sending an email, and this one parent has been asking for the last 30 days, so I know it's challenging, but just a time frame of the process to whether they are approved or denied, how long does that take?
Administration?
Director Taylor, President Peterson, members of the board, David Solik, 5 Farrick. Typically, we review them monthly. We do have a staff member that, as they come in, does a pre-review to kind of put them into the appropriate bucket. And there's really 3 categories for us right now. Either you're too close, you're too far, or you don't like the kind of service that you're getting, city bus versus yellow bus. And so when we try to address those issues, obviously the families that are the furthest are the ones that typically we try to address first, because those probably in most instances are the most cumbersome. Our policies for the elementary school is under 1 mile, so if we have a choice between a family that's 11 blocks away and 6.9 miles away, typically we try to address those higher priority situations. And then similarly, if we have a situation where the student is receiving services but would prefer to ride a yellow bus as opposed to a county transit bus pass, not to diminish the specific situation in that regard, we put that on a lower priority level because they have access. And so monthly, but depending upon the circumstance, we rise it up to a particular threshold. And if there's a certain family that has a circumstance, obviously we do take those case by case and would address those individually if need be.
Dr. Taylor, follow-up?
Yeah, and just on the numbers, I know you said there was 154 to date, but then there was also maybe 100 to 200 pending. Do we have an overall number of how many families we've assisted? And then maybe the more up-to-date number?
Administration.
Director Taylor, President Peterson, members of the board, David Solik, Phi Fair. I want to clarify, and Dr. Posley brought it to my attention, to answer the question directly. Typically, when we get a review, it's under 30 days where we're going to have a response, right? So if you get something on the first, we should be reviewing and responding within that 30-day threshold to get them those services. And oftentimes, more to the point, many of the situations don't actually make it to appeal. They get to the supervisor and to the principal at the school first. And so it's hard to really just put into a definitive number how many exceptions are made. We do track eligible versus non-eligible, whether they're in an appeal or not, because if they have reached a principal or an administrator at the central office point, we may have accommodated it. So I could, at the next report, bring back the number of ineligible kids that are riding on a bus, the number of walkers that are riding on a bus, so that you can get a better idea of percentages. That might be just a truer tell for appeals, because not everything goes through the form, if I can, and if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Other members of the committee? Any questions? Thank you very much. Keep up your good work on getting our transportation straightened out. Superintendent?
All right. Next, we have I'm Unique Triplet.
Good evening, President Peterson. We have her come and speak to us. I just kind of want to give a little background. Part of the MQ College Connect. All the coursework for practical nursing license, and she did a large majority of that working through all of the problems of the pandemic with virtual learning and all that. And then also, many of the classes that she took were with other MATC practical nursing students, not her MPS peers. And they actually selected her to be the keynote speaker for their pinning ceremony this previous Tuesday. And I had the privilege to be there to witness that. And I'm glad that she's here with us tonight to share some of the same words with you all. And I just want to say, I'm Unique is really a testament to the power of what we're able to do for young MPS students gaining early credit towards career pathways through MQ College Connection. So without any further ado, I'm Unique. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, President Peterson, members of the board. I'm Unique Triplet. I am a senior at Rufus King High School and a soon-to-be graduate of Milwaukee Area Technical College. I began my journey in the M-Cubed Early College Nursing Program 2 years ago as a sophomore. Thanks to this wonderful program, I found my passion for a career in the healthcare field. Throughout these past couple of years, I found myself accomplishing things I never imagined myself accomplishing. It has been a great experience that I am extremely grateful to have been a part of. I stand before you all today to present the speech I addressed my classmates and the other graduates of the healthcare pathway with at the December 2021 pinning ceremony. Before I begin, I would like to dedicate the speech to a family friend of mine, Naomi Wilson, who passed away this October. She was a bright light in our community church, and I don't think she knew this, but she always inspired me. After her passing, I promised myself that I wouldn't give up and I would continue to work harder to achieve my goals just as she had in the short time she had with us. It is an honor to stand before you all tonight. I'd like to thank my classmates for trusting me enough to represent them at tonight's pinning ceremony. We did it. And now it feels like a great weight has been lifted off of our shoulders, and we can finally breathe and take in this precious moment. We definitely face some challenges and setbacks. Overcoming them has gotten us to where we are at this very moment. Overcoming these things has taught us that we are strong and capable of accomplishing so much more. We've cried, felt discouraged, and many of us have even thought about quitting at some point. Nursing school is no joke. But here we are getting ready to graduate from it and embark on a new journey as graduates. We've put our all into succeeding, so take a moment to pat yourself on the back and give yourself credit for this huge accomplishment. I remember starting nursing school excited but terrified. I didn't have faith in myself that I'd be able to make it this far. I received one piece of advice that stuck with me that helped me get through it. My great uncle used to say all the time that self-preservation is the first law of nature. All of us have persevered and pushed through, even when we felt like there was no more fight left in us. A lot of us stayed up all night studying for exams, trying to make sure we'd hit that 80% mark, writing detailed essays about sterile catheterization. Many of us got to experience some things for the first time, such as drawing up medications from vials and giving combative patients injections. The point is, we have all accomplished so much, and we should all be proud of ourselves. To the family and friends in the audience here to support their loved ones, please give a round of applause to your graduate and their classmates. I'd like to thank my parents, family, instructors, MATC faculty, friends, and classmates. There have been countless times where I've been spotted sitting at MATC studying, where staff and other students would come over to me and offer their support, companionship, and resources. I am extremely grateful to you all. I'd personally like to thank Aaron and James, the M-Cubed High School Program Coordinators, who have supported me throughout this entire journey. Thank you to my nursing instructors, Patty and Robin, for always being so positive and always having something encouraging to say. Thank you to my nursing instructors, Ms. Boyd and Paul, for always making class enjoyable and entertaining. Thank you as well to my clinical instructor, Dr. Nafour, for being an example of excellence in the healthcare field. You truly have inspired me. And to Dr. Cloesy for helping me not only in your English class, but also as I move forward throughout the nursing program. Finally, thank you to my people who are here supporting me tonight. I know you weren't exactly eager to hear me go on and on and on about how hard nursing school was and the ins and outs of the human body, but I appreciate you and I love you all. This experience wouldn't have been the same without you. From my closest friends helping me study at midnight to my mom staying up helping me prepare for finals, I have been supported in every way possible. At this time, I would like all of the graduates to take a moment to give those special people that have helped, supported, and encouraged you a round of applause. And for our instructors, please clap for yourselves because you have raised an amazing group of future healthcare professionals. I hope that we all continue to persevere as we prepare to take the NCLEX. We survived nursing school, so we can survive almost anything. Continue to lead with compassion and selflessness. Though the NCLEX will prepare us for the textbook part of nursing, it has been our clinical courses that have taught us the human part of nursing, humility, the delicacies of love, respect, and kindness necessary for effectively treating our patients. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak and for your attention. I wish you all the best as we prepare for graduation. I'd like to offer you all one last piece of advice as you prepare to take the NCLEX. We have learned many test-taking skills and tactics from our instructors, but this one has stuck with me the most. If you've had Ms. Boyd as an instructor, then you are probably pretty familiar with it. My piece of advice for you all is, if it ain't all right, it's all wrong. Thank you, and congratulations to the class of 2021.
We are so excited for all of our students that's a part of the MCube Connection, College Connection. It's just been truly amazing to see how our young people are moving forward, and just think about we are preparing young people for the future in the midst of a pandemic, and we are preparing nurses to take their place. So thank you. I'm Unique. You make all of us truly MPS proud. Thank you. My final update is related to a comprehensive evaluation of charter schools. In collaboration with the Office of Board Governance and Accountability and Efficiency, the administration will seek an external evaluator to provide an analysis of the MPS charter schools and the impact on the district. The vendors that we have reached out to stated that more time would be needed to conduct the analysis. We expect that the vendors will provide an update, and then we will provide an update to an updated timeline for consideration and follow-up with the board in the first of the year in January. So upon completion of the evaluation, a report will be provided to the board in full. And at this time, I will just ask the partners that are working along with us, Mr. Chasen, as well as Dr. Mann, if there's any further comments in regards to our work around this effort.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have no comment from the Office of Board Governance. We're on board with moving forward with an external evaluation.
Mr. Chasen?
Chair Peterson, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I'll just echo what Dr. Mann said, and we look forward to collaboration. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications? What's our next communication, rather?
The next communication is action on a request to retire to executive session to confer with legal counsel and to take possible action on litigation on the ERD case number CR 20-200-1138 and cross-filed as EEOC case number 26G20-2000-805C. The recommendation is that the board into closed session to confer with legal counsel regarding this matter.
Madam Secretary, if there are no objections, we will defer this item to the end of the meeting.
So noted.
Madam Secretary, what's the next communication from the superintendent?
The next communication from the Superintendent of Schools is action on a request to waive Administrative Policy 3.09, Parent 9, Parent E, and issue a contract with Charter Communications Operating LLC for E-rate services. The recommendation is that the board authorize the waiver due to the contract term and approve the contract for Charter Communications Operating LLC as set forth in the attachment to this item.
Will the superintendent please present this item?
Yes, this item requests waiver for Administrative Policy 3.09 and an issue a contract with Charter Communications LLC for E-rate. At this time, I will ask Janine Adamczyk to provide some additional information. Janine?
Director, President Peterson, members of the board, Janine Adamczyk, Director of Procurement and Risk Management. Thank you for the time to discuss this request to waive the 3-year term limit of Administrative Policy 3.09 and enter into a contract with Charter Communications for leased Metro Ethernet
Mr.
services.
Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Janine, is your microphone on? If you could pull it forward. We couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Leased Metro Ethernet services are multi-point connectivity services over a metropolitan area and across our district. The E-rate program, administered by the Federal Communications Commission, provides discounts on eligible telecommunication services and products for eligible schools and libraries. Discounts are available through an application process. The district has participated in this program since its inception in 1998. The competitive RFP was issued in September and was posted for the requisite time period required by E-rate rules. It is anticipated that E-rate will pay an estimated 90% of the amount deemed E-rate eligible for leased Metro Ethernet services. Given the significant amount of work related To implement a new vendor for these complex services, the administration requests a waiver of Administrative Policy 3.09 to allow for the possibility of contract terms longer than 3 years. As you know, when negotiating a contract, there is much back and forth, so we wanted to ensure we had a contract that had the best interests of the district in mind. The contract would run from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, with 4 additional one-year options to extend. The administration will return to the board each year to request authorization. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does the board wish to make any comments? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before going into a vote on the, before going into a motion, I do want to publicly acknowledge that this item was noticed for public hearing, and we had no one to register to request to speak on this item.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board in regard to this item?
I move to approve action on a request to waive administrative policy and issue a contract with Charter Communications.
Thank you, Director Gokagani. Director O'Halloran.
I second.
Any discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Gokul-Gandhi's motion, seconded by Director O'Halloran, moving approval to waive Administrative Policy 3.09, Parent 9, Parent E, and issue a contract with Charter Communications Operating LLC for E-rate services. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul-Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor. And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the Office of Board Governance?
Yes, Mr. President, we do have 2 communications actually from the Office of Board Governance. And the first communication is an update relative to the information on the development of an election district apportionment plan for the election of members of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 119.08, Parent 1. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the board clerk please present the report?
Yes, Mr. President and members of the board, I'm sure people have been following, but just wanted to give the board an update on where we are in the process. As we are still waiting for the city to adopt its district map, the board will then begin its process immediately following such adoption, beginning its 60-day timeline to adopt a plan and process for the board's apportionment. So earlier this month, the mayor did veto the maps that were presented by the Common Council. The mayor was here earlier. I thought he was coming in to speak on this item, but he did not come up to the podium. And so I just wanted to give the board some information about its timeline. So with the expectation that the Common Council will again consider a new map on January 18th, that the board's 60-day timeline would begin after that if the Common Council approves the new map. So what we're looking at relative to the district's timeline is in January that the board would actually adopt a schedule and process for redistricting based on that 60-day timeline required by statute. And then in January, also, the board will hold its first public hearing to hear from the public on its proposed plan in January or early February, depending on the dates. We expect to get a draft map for board districts from the Legislative Reference Bureau from the city of Milwaukee, and then be able to publicize the board's maps based on what the projections would be relative to any changes, followed by the actual public hearing on those proposed maps, and then final adoption by February, early March for the board's apportionment.
One question I have, you said January 18th. Did you mean December 18th for the Common Council answer?
I do believe that that is January.
Okay.
18th.
Very good. Any questions for the Office of Board Governance? Dr. O'Halloran.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand. I know we have a 60-day window from, like, the clock starts when the city approves theirs. I just want to make sure there's nothing on the other end bookending it that is there any other deadline that we have to get it under? I just want to make sure if there's no other deadline, it's just the 60 days that we need to be mindful of.
Mr. President, members of the board, that is correct. The 60 days after adoption of the city council's map.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other comments? We do not need to take any action on this item.
That is correct. This is an informational update.
Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the
The
Office
next
of?
communication is the monthly report with possible action from legislative activities affecting MPS. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the board clerk please present the report?
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Chris Thiel is at the podium and prepared to give the update.
Great.
Good evening, members of the board. President Peterson, Chris Thiel, Office of Government Relations for Milwaukee Public Schools. Just continuing some of the updates that we've discussed over the last couple of months. Again, if you've been following the discussions at the federal level and the Build Back Better program, the vote on that is now pushed into the new year. So we have not seen resolution on those items, including the early childhood policies that we are excited about. So we hope that resolution comes soon as we enter the new year. And a couple of other updates dating back over the course of this year. One pertains to the Sr3 funding. This is the COVID support that we've talked a lot about, and you may have seen in the news, and you may have seen some exchanges in Madison regarding the fact that the state plan had not been formally approved by the Department of Education. And so although we've been talking about Sr3 funding for quite a long time, since the spring when it came out, school districts across the state have not actually had access to those funds. So though the board has gone through the planning, other school districts have gone through the planning, the administration has not been in a position where it could actually activate those funds quite yet. So that was a bit of a piece of news that came out earlier this month. What we have subsequently had from the Department of Education is confirmation that our district, along with a number of others who received 90% of those funds, will have access to that money. As you'll recall, those dollars were distributed more or less through the Title I formula plan. And since we were in that category, Department of Ed has confirmed that while they work out the 5 to 10% of the remainder of the plan, we should have access to those funds. So that's good news that's finally in motion. A couple of other things that came together. One, we had a press conference from the governor and hosted him here at North Division High School, where he discussed the distribution of the $110 million that come from a separate pot of federal funding. If you'll recall, when we went through the state budget, this was almost a reaction that the governor had to the fact that for the first time since 1993, we didn't see a per pupil increase. So in responding to that action by the state legislature, the governor accessed $110 million of these federal dollars to help school districts during COVID. Again, we're in that communication phase, as we talked about last month, where we're trying to make sure that people understand there are some are sustainable dollars, some are one-time funds. And the $110 million that goes out to school districts across the state and the Sr3 money, those are one-time dollars and can only be expended over a small period of time. So that is to say that school districts, including ours, have to be careful about how we spend those dollars. And though there's been communication out there that the reason for not providing a per pupil increase at the state level was because districts received the federal money, state money is sustainable funding, and it provides a foundation for staff and expenditures that are ongoing. These COVID dollars are one-time dollars and have to be treated differently. So what you have this evening in your attachment is a Legislative Fiscal Bureau memo that points out, again, as we discussed last month, that since Governor Tommy Thompson invented this revenue limit system, there has never been a budget or 2 consecutive years where there has been no funding increase to the revenue limit. And people should understand, I know we use these technical terms, but revenue limit that's always been keep pace funding. It was designed to try to match the consumer price index. It always didn't quite do that because it didn't quite come in to the extent that school districts needed. But this is the first time where we've had 2 consecutive years of no funding increase. And I think the governor said it best actually at that press conference when he reflected again on the $2 billion that is in Madison. In his words, he said, there are millions and millions of dollars in Madison that should be in our schools. So as discussions move forward in January, we expect to see another revenue update from the state. Early indications are that we'll continue to see that level of revenue there. And with the legislative session ending in spring, there are building calls to have a special session or a session of some sort to provide a revenue limit increase using those state dollars. And just as a reminder, if what the governor had proposed had become law, it was a $200 increase in the first year, $204 in the second. And since, again, that's sustainable funding, we would be working with $404 more per pupil, which is up above $25 million for the district of sustainable funding that we could have used going forward. So I'm often asked by board members, what can we do? There's a school boards convention that's coming up here in January, and as school board members are working together across the state, being in unity to ask for that special session and that increase, I think, is something that we can all work on together. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the board? Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. I guess I just have one question. I just want to make sure I understand. So with Governor Evers' announcement, which I'm very grateful for, of the plan to distribute $110 million more of federal funds to the schools. So what is the timeline on that? So, and do we have a plan for that? Or because somebody, like, they heard that and they were just like, how are you spending it? And I was like, I don't know, man, I just saw this. So it was kind of caught me by surprise. So I just want to make sure I understand the timeline and any planning that would go into that allocation.
Mr. Thiel.
President Peterson, Director O'Halloran, thank you for the question. The other federal funds have had different end dates on them. The Sr3, I think, can be extended to 2023, 2024. I don't, unfortunately, have the detail on the 110 million, but I think we'll be in that similar kind of time horizon for when those dollars can be spent. And as was noted at the press conference by Superintendent Posley and President Peterson, we had questions from the media about how will you balance the spending of that money and trying to accomplish that trick of bringing in the resources to support students, but not putting ourselves in a situation again where we can't sustain programs is, I think, part of the discussion you will be having going forward.
Yes. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governments? Oh, from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency. Okay, could we please have the report?
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. That report is before you. Additionally, I want to share some updates on some recent work surrounding recently adopted resolutions of the board. The first is on Resolution 2122R-011 by Director Simpson regarding a comprehensive evaluation of the budget planning process. The timing of the adoption of that resolution coincided with our annual work to develop the district's 5-year forecast. As such, the forecast team has been using an evaluative lens during the regular forecasting process to identify opportunities that align with the direction of the resolution. Some of the opportunities that we've identified are to improve the board's ability to communicate its strategic priorities in the budget process, especially when considering that through an equity lens. Additionally, making sure that the budget reporting that accompanies presentations of the budget provides clarity to both the board and the public. It supports decision-making and a clear understanding. It really trying to strike a balance between presenting where every one of $1 billion in the organization goes, while also supporting the alignment of those allocations to the board's interests and priorities. These forecast-related opportunities will be considered collaboratively by the OAE, the Office of Award Governance, and the administration in the context of the larger comprehensive evaluation outlined in the resolution. Secondly, I have an update on Resolution 2021R-004 by Directors Peterson and Taylor regarding regional equity and desegregation. In order to support the regional focus of that resolution, the Office of Accountability and Efficiency was engaged to design a survey to better understand the current state of equity work in the metropolitan Milwaukee area and to gauge interest in collaborative opportunities. The OAE worked collaboratively with the Office of Board Governance to send the survey to 96 school district leaders, representing 48 unique school districts in Milwaukee, Ozaukee, Washington, and Waukesha counties. The survey was sent in November of 2020 and asked respondents to provide information regarding current or planned activities to reduce racial segregation and/or increase integration. From the responses to the survey, a collaboration group of regional partners representing 9 school districts and community and fair housing partners met in both March and in June of 2021. At these meetings, information on segregation in the Milwaukee metropolitan area was discussed, and options to improve integration and equity were explored. Additionally, in August of 2020, we became aware of an opportunity to submit an application to join the Bridges Collaborative, which is a school integration initiative under the Sr3 Foundation. Upon being selected, the district joined a cohort of 27 school districts and 13 housing organizations from across the country. And we have participated in 2 national convenings to learn from one another, build grassroots support, and explore successful strategies for integration. This partnership has also afforded the district the opportunity to apply for and subsequently be awarded a grant to host our own regional convening. This small one-day conference, and by small I mean limited to in-person, indoors, while recognizing COVID protocols, a conference of regional partners that we have titled School Integration in Metropolitan Milwaukee, the Past, Present, and Future. And this will be held in January of 2022. I want to thank the Office of Board Governance, the administration, and Directors Peterson and Taylor for their assistance in this important work. And that concludes what will likely be the longest monthly report update you will ever hear from this office. Thank you very much.
Does the board wish to make any comments on either of the, or any of his comments in his reports? Thank you very much.
Oh, Chair Pearson, my apologies. I also wanted to ask the chair to recognize OBG and or the administration if they wanted to offer any comments as well.
OBG.
Mr. President, members of the board, I have no additional comments. Just wanted to be sure that the dates of the convening is separate from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards Conference, which is also January of 2022.
Right, it will be. And the superintendent?
President Peterson and members of the board, I have no additional comments as well, no more than that we look forward to continuing to collaborate to move this forward.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, what is our next item of business?
The next item on tonight's agenda is the report of the independent hearing officers of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors. This is the report on student expulsions.
Okay, administration.
Mr. Chair, at this time, it would be the board entertaining a motion.
Okay, to accept, modify, or reject the report of the independent hearing officer.
So noted.
Okay, so we need a motion to accept, modify, or reject the reports of the independent hearing officers of the dates and times listed in our agenda. Would I get a motion to that effect?
Move to approve.
And Director
Move to
Garcia?
approve the- Yep.
Okay. Motion is made by Director Garcia. Is there a second? Director O'Halloran. Okay, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Garcia's motion to accept the reports of the independent hearing officers, seconded by Director O'Halloran. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor. And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
We'll now have the reports of the standing committee. Since public hearing was given at the committee meetings, the board, as is customary, will not be giving public hearing on these reports this evening. Madam Secretary, what is the first report?
The first report is that of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. Item 3 of this report, action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited term employment contracts exceeding 60 days has been set aside as this item was forwarded to the board without recommendation.
Okay, do any board members wish to include any other items to be set aside? And Director O'Halloran.
Item number 4 on school calendars.
Okay, any other board members wish to set some item aside? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement. No items of this report has been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside from this report? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, what's the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. No items of this report has been set aside for separate consideration.
Board members, anybody want to set an item from this report aside? Okay, now what we need is a motion, an action on a motion for the balance of the reports of the standing committee. Director Taylor. Okay, a second. Director O'Halloran, seconded. Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Taylor's motion to approve the balance of the reports, and that is outside of the items that have been set aside, seconded by Director O'Halloran. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor and President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item?
Now, Mr. President, we are back to the items that were set aside. Given that one of the items is noticed for closed session, the first item to be considered that was set aside would be item number 4, which is action on a request to approve the proposed 2022-23 school calendars. That item was set aside by Director O'Halloran.
Okay. Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually don't want to hold it up. I just would like in the new year, if you could bring back an analysis. I know we talked about it in committee and I didn't give you ample time to produce a full analysis around what the costs and benefits would be of moving the early start schools to a traditional start if they were able to. So I just wanted to make that formal request that something comes back in the new year, recognizing that many of our next year's plans are already in the works on the idea that we would likely go forward with our current planning. So that was my only request. So I don't know if I need to make a motion to actually accept the committee's recommendation on this, but I would be glad to move it. I just wanted to make that formal request.
Okay,
Mr.
motion.
Chair,
Yes.
members of the board, Director O'Halloran, would you like to hear from the administration on this item, or?
Sure. Yes, I would like to as well. Ms. Superintendent.
President Peterson, Director O'Halloran, members of the board, we'd be more than happy to bring that request back.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we do need a motion, I believe. Director O'Halloran.
I move we approve administration's recommendation on the proposed calendars for the next year.
A second. Director Gokul Gandhi seconded it. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the committee's recommendation relative to action on a request to approve the proposed 2022-23 school calendar, seconded by Director Gokul Gandhi. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor. And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what's the next item of business?
The next item that was set aside is from the report on the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel, and that is item number 3, action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. This item has been set aside as it was forwarded to the board without recommendation.
Okay, may I have a motion on this item? Or comment? Was it Director O'Halloran?
Thank you. I would like to go into closed session, so I would just move that we go into closed session.
Is this the final item that we have to consider in open session?
Mr. Chair, this is on the regular items of business, yes.
Okay, so then we'll take a motion to move into closed session. Would that be appropriate,
So
Madam Chair?
noted.
Do I need the whole spiel?
Mr. Chair, we do have a motion, and if we could have a second on this motion.
Director Taylor seconded it.
Okay. And so on the motion to retire to closed session relative to item number, the item on from Accountability, Finance, and Personnel, action on recommended administrative appointments. And so the exceptions that the board retire into executive session would be quoted by the president before taking the vote.
Okay. That's an interesting thing to find. Okay, I see.
Thank you.
Okay, listen up. In regard to item B of the reports and communications from the superintendent of schools, the board may retire into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.851F, which allows closed sessions for the purpose of considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations, and Wisconsin Statute 19.851G, which allows a closed session to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The board may return to open session to take action on matters introduced in closed session and/or to continue with the remainder of the agenda. Okay, with respect to the following reports, the board pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 19.851F may retire to executive session for the purpose of considering disciplinary data or specific persons, and may reconvene in open session to take action on matters considered in executive session and/or to continue with the remainder of the agenda.
So noted.
So do we need a motion?
Yes, we have a motion by Director O'Halloran, seconded by Director Taylor.
Okay, would
We
you
have a
please,
question? Okay.
please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion, seconded by Director Taylor, to retire to closed session relative to administrative appointment item. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor. And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Could you please note the time?
So noted.
Directors will once again come to order. The board is retired to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 19.85 1F and 19.85 1G. What is the pleasure of the board in regard to matters discussed in the executive session? Director O'Halloran.
I move we accept administration's recommendation regarding the individuals to be promoted, appointed, or reassigned.
Is there a second? Director Garcia has seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director O'Halloran's motion, seconded by Director Garcia, to move approval on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. On the motion as read, Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor.
Abstain.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, 1 abstention. The motion passes.
Director O'Halloran, do you have a comment to make?
Continuing the tradition of Director Phillips, I just wanted to congratulate everybody on their appointments, promotions, reclassifications, new hires. I just wanted to thank you for bringing your talents to serve the community in Milwaukee. Go forth and do great things.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what's our next item?
The next item are items of regular business, and there are 2 items of regular business. Item number 1 is the report of the board's delegates. The first report is that of the board's delegate to the Title I District Advisory Council. And that report is attached.
So that report is attached. Next item?
The next report is the report of the delegate to the Head Start Policy Council. That report is also attached.
Okay. And is there another report?
Yes, Mr. President. The next item of regular business is the report of the President of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
And that is also attached. What is the next item?
The next item is the items of unfinished business, and we have no unfinished business.
Okay. And then the following item?
The following item is items of new business. And we do have 1 item of new business for referral, and that item is a referral of a request to establish administrative policy 9.14 community schools.
Okay, that will be referred to the appropriate committee. Next item of business?
The next item is the referrals to committee. And that is a communication item. We have 1 communication for referral, and that is communication 2122C-003 on a request to rename Custer Stadium.
And this item will be referred to the administration. Madam Secretary, are there any resolutions for referral to committee?
Mr. President, we have no resolutions this month.
Okay, so Madam Secretary, what is our next item?
The next item puts us back to a previous item that was deferred, and that is on communication number 2 from the Superintendent of Schools. Action on a request to retire to executive session to confer with legal counsel and to take possible action on litigation on an ERD case number CR 2200 1138, cross-filed as EEOC case number 26G 202000805C.
Okay, and do I need to read the, what I read before?
That is correct.
Oh, good. Getting practice reading out loud. It's a great story, too, so listen up. At this time, the board will retire to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.851F, which allows a closed session for the purpose of considering financial, medical, social, personnel histories, or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or investigation of charges against specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations, and Wisconsin State Statute 19.851G to confer with legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The board will reconvene in open session to take action on matters considered in executive session and/or to continue with the remainder of its agenda. Will the secretary please note the time?
At this time, we will consider a motion to retire to executive session on the superintendent's communication number 2 as read into the record by President Peterson.
Director O'Halloran.
So moved.
Director Gokul Gandhi, second. Okay, please take the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to retire to executive session on communication number 2 from the superintendent of schools, seconded by Director Gokul Gandhi. Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor. And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Statute Section 1981, 1F, and 1985, 1G. The board will now take this matter under advisement and take discussion and vote on it. And I'll make the motion and ask for a second. I move the approval of the settlement agreement as presented in executive session relative to ERD case CR 20201138, cross-filed as EOC case number 26 G 202008005C. Is there a second? Director Gokul Gandhi? Seconded it. Is there any discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On President Peterson's motion, seconded by Director Gokul Gandhi, to approve the settlement agreement relative to litigation on ERD case number CR 202001138, cross-filed as EEOC case number 26G 202000805C. On the motion as read into the record, Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor. Aye. And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Mr. President, that was the last item on tonight's agenda.
Okay, before we adjourn, I just want to wish everybody happy holidays. Be safe, relaxed, and please refresh. Okay. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.